Welcome, critters. I'm Claire Jones, your devoted host of the Sacred Reading CR podcast, where we discuss and examine Critical Role episodes, plot lines, characters, everything in between through the lens of sacred reading practices. So this particular episode is about Campaign 1, Episode 17, I believe, Part 1. And joining me today is Alyssa.
Hi, guys.
All right. I just realized I did not choose an icebreaker question, so this is going to be really fast. I'm just going to do the first one that jumps out at me. So, what is your favorite piece of clothing?
I have this skirt that I bought for a Ren Fair, and it's super long and flowy, and it makes me feel like a princess. So we're gonna go with that.
What color
it's
is
ironically the same color as this shirt.
Like a foresty green?
Yeah.
Nice. I mean, Ren Fair costuming and clothing is top tier.
Plus, it's where you get to wear all of the fun things that everybody would judge you for in normal life. So,
well, yeah, you just have to put you in situations where that is the norm and actual life is abnormal.
Yeah, somehow I don't feel like it would meet lab requirements. So,
yeah,
there's very few places I can wear it in my day-to-day, but it's fun to wear.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna have to go with comfort too, comfort and style, and go with, I have this cheetah print sweater duster kind of
nice
thing. And it has really long arms and it's really thick sweater, like it's not thin cardigan. It's toasty and it's cozy and it's fashionable, but it's like basically like I'm wearing a robe, but I can get away with calling it fashion. So
I love it. It's delightful.
Yeah, it's pretty much like wearing pajamas to meetings and getting away with it.
Yeah, that's the ultimate goal, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it would only be better if it had some sequins and sparkle on it. I think that would take it to the next level, but otherwise it's pretty damn close to perfect.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, please join us as we embark on this adventure in story analysis and self-reflection in order to deepen our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. So as always, we love hearing your own insights and stories as well. So remember to reach out, comment, like, and share. And then ready? All right, let's dive in. So Vox Machina have just completed their mission of interring the Horn of Orcus under the Grand Chantry of the Platinum Dragon in Vasselheim, and Pike has said farewell to the group for now, choosing to help bring an ancient temple of Sarenrae back to its former glory, aka go film Blind Spot. Now they are standing around and trying to figure out what to do with themselves, while Percy looks at a statue and Scanlan drinks his scrying shit potion that he purchased from Gilmore, leaving a pile of magic poop in a corner of the temple so that he can check in on Pike from time to time. Oh, Scanlan. Meanwhile, the rest of the group examines the statue that is perched on top of a blocky temple, and they realize that it is a depiction of the deity Cord. He is known as the god of warfare, combat, and storms. Vax stops a passerby and asks him about the temple. He is told that this area of the city is known as the Braving Grounds, built around the worship of Cord, and the temple itself is called the Trial Forge and is the oldest known temple to Cord. He also asks if anyone is welcome to fight at the forge, and he is told that if he's looking for a tussle, he should look for the Crucible. The group expresses interests and asks some more questions before deciding to go try their hands in the fighting ring. They head in the direction he indicated and arrive at the Bellows Respite Tavern, where a large group of people are congregated. Grog breaks off from the group in a run of excitement, and the rest of them hustle after him to find that the group of people surrounding there is a literal pit in the ground where two individuals are currently fighting. The woman fighter wins as they approach, and Grog asks someone in the crowd who she is. He's told that her name is the Siren, and he immediately signs himself up for the next fight. Vax proposes to fight Grog himself, but they are told that the new entrants must fight against an existing fighter first. So Vex and Vax start putting down massive bets with the guy in charge. And there's some shit talking before Tiberius gets scolded for trying to cast a protective spell on Grog. Grog gives his name as Philip to the bookie, who announces that he will be fighting Kern the Hammer, a tall half-orc built like a building with no weapons and no armor. Scanlan tries to slip him a potion of fire giant strength, but is not successful in his stealth and is stopped by someone in the crowd. Grog rages and then leaps into the pit and casts intimidating presence, but Kern unfortunately saves from the effect. Kern approaches him and launches into a series of punches, so Grog responds by going into a frenzied rage and punching him back. They trade a lot of blows for a while, whittling away at each other's hit points. I did not want to write the blow by blow of each punch, so I'm summarizing it. Until Kern rushes forward and sinks his teeth into Grog's shoulder and neck area and pulls away with flesh in his mouth. So Grog retaliates in kind and bites a chunk off of Kern's upper lip. Grog continues his assault, knocking him to the ground, but Kern sweeps his feet out from underneath him and they wrestle with each other until Vax yells from the crowd, "Your father was an undead piece of shit and your cousin is going to make you his bitch." If ever a speech it was. Grog reaches forward to shove his thumbs into Kern's eye sockets, but Kern catches his hands before he can, so Grog elbows him in the face again. They are bloody as fuck, but they actually get to their feet once again, and Grog manages to land a few blows to knock Kern out. But unfortunately, Kern has a half-orc ability that revives him to 1 hit point, and he gets back up to fell Grog with a final blow. He falls to his face on the ground, and the whole crowd goes wild, while Kern slowly and painfully climbs out of the pit with 1 hit point to his name. The healers they have on hand rush to heal both Grog and Kern, as Scanlan rushes forward to comfort Grog, lying to him and saying that he won the fight when he gains consciousness. Grog doesn't say anything, though, as he joins the rest of the group, and the bookie approaches them. He says that he is impressed by Grog's showing, that he is welcome to fight in the pit anytime, but Grog just walks away. Vex asks if there's any brothels nearby, and Percy offers Grog some ice cream. The bookie tells them that the Bellows Respite does have companions available, so they head inside. The crowd gathered gives Grog a round of applause as they walk in, and the barkeep gives him an ale on the house. Grog sullenly answers that he likes the barkeep's beard. Vax slides the barkeep some gold and tells him to keep the ale coming all night, and they arrange for some rooms. Vax tries to make Grog feel better by telling him that if they had fought each other without weapons, Vax would have been beat into a bloody pulp by Grog. Grog answers by saying, "Oh, you were serious about that?" Keyleth suggests going to bed. Scanlan invites them to his room so that they can shit scry on Pike together, group activity. And Grog says that he will just be at the bar. Travis delivers the line by dejectedly biting into a piece of chicken they have on set, and Sam makes a joke that as Grog, he just bit into a piece of wood in his sadness. A lot of laughter ensues, but Grog drinks his worries away until he stumbles up to the brothel and sloppily disappoints the woman until he passes out in his own sorrow. And that's where they break for the episode. So what do we think of this first half?
The thing I love about this first half is it's so ridiculous, but it also sets up a lot of slow burn for not just this campaign, but next campaign, and for things like narrative telephone, and for Travis himself as a player.
Yeah.
So watching back, it seems innocuous, but there's so much that starts in this episode, and I love that.
Yeah. It's so easy to dismiss as fluff. You're right. It's a lot of filler, but I think that also speaks to the ease of which we have dismissing Grog as a character as well.
Yeah, that is definitely something that I spent a lot of time this week thinking about, is that we gloss over Grog because he's the dumb comic relief.
Yeah.
But he's like, especially in this episode, he was really allowing himself to show how much he hurt and how much he cared.
Mhm.
And he shows it all the time, but it was really the focus this time. He was the only one really doing much of anything. Everybody else was his audience, his cheerleaders.
Mhm.
And I feel like it gets lost when everybody else is also having emotional moments. And this time it was front and center and hard to dismiss.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's something that we can say about this half of the episode. That's something that we can say about Grog as a character. And I think that's also something we can say about Travis as a player. Because Travis does tend to take a backup role in the group. Like, he does come up with strategy, but only if the other characters aren't able to think of it first.
Yeah, I think that's very much his comfort zone,
Yeah.
is a little bit behind the scenes. And I think that speaks a lot to, Travis's character. But I also think it speaks a lot to his comfort with the game.
Mhm.
He's one of the ones that wasn't super into D&D in the first place. He tells the story a lot of, he's the jock and it wasn't cool, and it took him some time to get comfortable with it. And I think we kind of see that in the characters he plays, especially in Grog,
Yeah.
who is meant to be the background comic relief and not the one driving the story.
Yeah. Like, we don't see much of Grog's character in the episodes leading up to this. He can be seen in this background sense because of his low intelligence and high strength. Like, those are the two defining features of his character. But there's depth there. And this episode is the first step to making his character 3D. And it's surprisingly through challenges that we see this character growth of his as well. Like, I was thinking as I was writing my notes, like, how would have Tiberius reacted if he were in that situation?
Very differently, and it would have been a lot harder to watch.
Yeah. I mean, we can even say like how Percy would have reacted in that situation, or
Yeah.
Vax would have reacted in that situation, even like Pike or Vex. I think it really does have a lot of impact when these characters are faced with challenges and how they choose to rise to the occasion or not.
Yeah, and I think that this is a bit of a turning point for Grog,
Mhm.
because he goes into it so confident and so cocky and so sure. They've just come off of beating, some part of the Underdark, and they're so sure of themselves, but looking back, we realize how low level they are. Like, we haven't even hit Trial of the Take, much less Briarwoods yet. And they're already at this level of confidence. And it's not just Grog, it's the people betting on him. They all feel this way.
They lost so much
They
money.
lost so much money. But it's that kind of reality check that they all needed after a series of successes.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting too that we're starting to see nuances show in many of the characters as well. Like, it's not like Grog is heavily featured in this first half, obviously, and we've kind of been focusing on Keyleth and her nuances and like the episodes leading up to this, with like her introduction to Vasselheim as a whole, I think is a challenge to her character in general. And then soon we're going to move into Percy's nuances with the whole Briarwood arc. And I just find it fascinating that we're at this crux moment with more than one character as well.
I wonder if this is when they really started to think that this stream might be successful. Because they've spoken about how a lot of these characters didn't really have the depth and the nuance until they became a story that was shared.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of wondering if this is when they start to realize that that's something they need to do.
Yeah.
And that this really has a chance to go somewhere.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, because as we head into this episode in particular, Matt is just coming back to LA from doing a tour in the South Pacific, like Australia and that area, doing a bunch of cons in that part of the world. And he was blasted with critter love. On the other side of the planet, he was blasted with critter love, and they're still like under 6,000 subscribers on their Twitch channel at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, this episode they were trying to make 5,000. Like the whole hype was to hit 5,000.
Yeah,
just crazy to me.
Yeah, and it's starting to gain critical mass in terms of how they're starting to build more lasting foundations for themselves as a brand, as a group, as an adventuring party.
all of the above.
Yeah, and I just think it's fascinating that because we were talking about growing pains not too long ago on this podcast series, and that's definitely the theme that we're seeing here across the board with these episodes.
Yeah, I think we're really starting to hit that point where it could have gone either way, where if they hadn't adjusted right, it could have crashed and burned. And where if they had gone too far, it wouldn't have really worked out either. And they managed to find some kind of balance somehow. I don't know how. It's impressive as hell. But this is the point in the series where I think they are taking it seriously for kind of the first time. It's not just a one-time, we'll try it and see what happens. It's a true, this could be something.
Yeah, and I think it's also important too in the plot of this game, like they're in a gap too in the plot. Like they just finished this huge arc with the Horn of Orcus and all of that, and they haven't really picked a direction yet beyond the amorphous, like, yeah, we might stop by Pyra kind of plan. And I think it says a lot to how much they were able to carry audience interest during this gap of time too. Like, that's hard to do.
It's their first real lull where they don't have a goal immediately. And that I think it's interesting, this series of episodes, these next like 4 or 5, of what they choose to do with that gap and how Matt kind of directs it. And we'll talk about that more when we get to those episodes. But it's fascinating to me, the choices they make here that become, years down the later, something super important. I got off of this episode and I went and rewatched Grog's narrative telephone because it was just that through line that I couldn't get out of my head. It goes on for years.
I mean, and part of my notes, I'm like, this is something that we see even in Ford later on.
Yeah, we definitely do.
It's a cross character evolution of Travis that we're seeing here, and this is the beginning.
I mean, this is the moment he chose a half orc. I mean,
you
can see it.
This is, but I also think it's also speaks to his growth as an actor and as a player to think beyond characters that are 2D. Like, I think Ford also has struggles early on in campaign 2 of stepping into the limelight, because that's just not where Travis's comfort zone is. He's a support character.
Yeah, and we can definitely tell by the way he went back to that support character as soon as he could.
Yeah.
Like, campaign 3 hit, and that's where he was.
Yeah, Ford was a stretch.
Well there.
Ford was a stretch.
Travis. Ford was impressive. I love how he played Ford, but it's very clear that he it's not the kind of character he wants to play on a regular basis. He'd rather trend more towards Grog. And I think it's interesting him trying to find that middle ground between this 2D, I just want to fight things, and the complexity that he was able to bring to the Mighty Nine. And he's done it well. And he took Grog and turned him into something 3D. It took some effort, but he did it. And that in itself is a heck of an accomplishment.
Yeah. Yeah, and like this is the beginning of us seeing him make these deeper emotional attachments with the people around him. Like if you pay attention to the people who like instantly went to comfort him as well during this, like Scanlon and Bax are really big relationships for him in this campaign. And I think we're seeing that play out here as well.
Yeah, I liked seeing how they all responded to his failure. Because every single one of them reacted in a different way to try to do the same thing, which tells us a lot about those characters. But the ones that were successful in making him feel better are the ones that matter. It's Vax paying for his drinks, it's Scanlon, making little jokes, but not pushing it too far and being the first one there. And it's leaving him alone when they feel like he needs to be. And unlike some of the others that are trying to comfort him in ways that just don't really work for him, it's those two that really hit the right spot. And I think that foreshadows a lot of the relationships we're going to get. So that was nice to see them kind of starting here.
Yeah. And I am sad that Pike wasn't here for that in particular either.
Yeah.
Like we miss a lot of the Grog and Pike dynamic with Pike being gone. And
I'm generally sad Pike is gone, but yes, especially for things like this.
Yeah, because I think that we would have gotten more depth with Grog maybe earlier on if Pike had been more present as well.
I think having Pike more present would have completely changed the dynamics of the team.
Yeah.
In some really interesting ways. But I am a sucker for sibling relationships. It is like the thing that makes or breaks entertainment for me. And I would have loved to see the kind of sibling response to everything that happened in this episode.
Yeah. Well, what personal experiences are coming up for us? I mean, that's a perfect segue right there, talking about sibling relationships.
Yes. I think the thing that came to mind was, I'm the oldest of my siblings. And so I kind of went off and did everything. And I feel like sometimes my brothers felt pressure to kind of keep up with the way I did things, which wasn't ways that worked for either of them. And that's totally fair.
Sure.
But having to kind of provide support and provide, a way out of a bad situation or a response to a bad situation that you might not understand the implications of because it just isn't how you think of the world or how you think of yourself. And even things like my youngest brother wasn't cut out for college. I knew that before he started. We kind of all did. He was much happier in trade school, and that's good for him. But it was hard for me to find a way to communicate that with him in a way that he would understand, that didn't make him feel like I was judging him or dragging him down. So I'm watching Vax and Scanlon and all the others try to comfort Grog and try to draw him out of his funk in all of their different ways. I was very heavily reminded of just the way that my brothers and I are very different people and we have very different responses, and trying to do the same thing, trying to provide the kind of comfort that I just didn't know how. A couple years on, we're in a much better place. Everybody was much happier. And we've all kind of moved on, but it was a learning experience. It's rough to do in practice.
Yeah. I think this part of the episode definitely underlines how difficult change can be, but it frames it in almost an optimistic lens because of those relationships that exist in this group.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Your relationships with other people can make or break a situation in completely different ways. And having, supportive relationships, even if they don't quite understand, can really turn something around.
Yeah, like if Grog were alone in the world, how would that first half have gone differently?
Oof. Yeah, that would have been something.
And like when I'm thinking about personal experiences for me, and I think we've talked about this on the podcast before, is like it's very easy to think about challenges and tests as punishments. And I think this is a great example of how it can actually kind of be a reward, but you have to meet the challenge in order to rise.
Right.
Like you can't let the challenge defeat you in the process. It's just another growth catalyst. It just might be a very uncomfortable growth catalyst.
But those are the most effective ones a lot of the time.
Yeah. Like you have to confront some challenges sometimes in order to grow. And it's hard it's impossible to expect really things to go according to plan, everything the way that you want, so on and so forth. I mean, like I'm thinking about businesses that I've started, I'm thinking about relationships that I've started, like it's a process to go through those challenges and help and view them as catalysts for growth more so than punishments, for sure.
For sure. It's not an easy thing to do. And I don't think anybody could argue that it is.
And I think we're talking about this is like, it depends on the group of people that you have surrounding you as well. Like I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Like I had that epiphany when it came to watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer once. Like it's my comfort show along with
Fair enough.
I've over a dozen times over the years I've watched the whole thing through, and it didn't occur to me until I think it was like last year or the year before that I realized the reason why Buffy succeeds where no other Slayer has succeeded before is because she has her group of friends backing her up. And that is a new situation for Slayers to be in, because they're usually like the lone wolf players.
Right.
They exist in the darkness and no one knows that they're there, but they do good and save the world. Just no one.
They gotta be the edgelord.
Right. And it was a huge epiphany to be like, oh, she succeeded because of her friends along the way. And having that realization just reinforces this thing that we're talking about here in terms of you will go farther and experience more with those people around you than if it's a solo endeavor.
Yeah. Oh, good things to think about and to recognize, hard things to implement.
Yeah, for sure. It's a process being aware, but it's also a process of knowing when to implement those teachings as well, and not swing too far in one direction or the other, because that's also a problem I've had over the years of being like too social, too outward focused and not inward focused enough. And I think Grog actually matches that balance here in this episode really well, of like going introspective but also trusting that his peeps got him.
I think it's interesting that Grog is so good at the social awareness side of things. Like that's where his wisdom lies, is in his interactions with other people. It's an interesting counterpart to his intelligence score, is that social awareness. He may be a bit of an idiot, lovable idiot, but an idiot, but he's so good with people.
Yeah. I wrote in my notes, is Grog the original himbo?
Kind of.
I also wrote, is Grog an Aries? Just like running head first into everything and then figuring it out after the fact. Like, he's a lovable character and he's easy to dismiss, but there is depth behind that big dumb facade.
Yeah. And especially as we get to see more and more of him and his backstory, it tells us a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, what are we going to do?
Pay attention to the people around us, see how it affects us.
Yeah.
It's easy just to stick with what's comfortable, but making sure that it's supportive and not taking away from your goals and endeavors is equally as important.
Yeah, I've been thinking lately I might need like a visual reminder of my team, like the people who keep me solid.
Yeah.
I might need like a little physical or visual wisdom circle representation. Like maybe I need to make a photo collage or something. Like all my people sitting around my round table.
Yeah. Now I have a wall over there that is out of sight, but it's pictures of all of my people. And I love having it in my office where I can just glance up and see it every day.
Yeah, I need more of a actual visual reminder because it's easy to forget that they don't or to forget that they exist because we do live all over the country as well. Like locally curated village. It's a globally, nationally curated.
Yeah, I don't have a single picture on that wall of somebody who lives in my state. Yeah, they're all over the place.
I mean, that's the funny thing about modern living, right? Like we are a globally connected society, and so we are no longer physically located near each other sometimes when it comes to our villages.
Yeah. I try to explain to my mother that most of my social life is virtual because nobody lives near me. She doesn't get it because it's a generational thing to some degree. But it works because they are, they're people I can rely on. They might be 2,000 miles away, but I can still call them when I need help. And they're ready to do whatever they can. And that's what matters.
Yeah, that is what matters at the end of the day. Thank goodness for the internet.
I appreciate the internet most of the time. I appreciate my heavily curated corner of the internet.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the internet does make it to my gratitude list sometimes, like just that it exists. I'm grateful for it. But there's a lot of salt that comes along with that.
Yeah. I like my little corner. I can do it without 98% of it.
I would have to think about what my percentages are. I don't think I know enough about the internet to come up with a percentage like that.
I'm just banking on the fact that there are aisles. I'm just banking on the fact that it is so huge that the odds are my corner is very small.
Yeah. That's fair. I am very surprised by the things that I learn sometimes about what exists out there.
That's fair.
All right. Well, anything we want to add before we wrap up for today?
I don't think so.
I mean, per usual, we're talking about powerful stuff. Like these are the themes of life. So, audience, we definitely encourage you to share your own insights and stories and life experiences with us as well. We'd love to know how Critical Role and its themes and everything that it involves has impacted you in your own lives. So, special thanks to Alyssa for joining me on this episode. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Anytime and always.
And she will be next for Campaign 1, Episode 17, Part 2. And we're super excited for that. As always, I'm looking for more co-hosts and guests. So if you're interested in coming on, hit me up. I'll send you the sign up link. In the meantime, please comment, like, subscribe below. Follow us on Tumblr at Sacred Reading CR. And until next time, may all beings be peaceful. May all beings be free. And always, always, always remember to love each other. Take care, guys.
See you next time.